My wife and I celebrated our 9th wedding anniversary last week, and to celebrate, we left the kids with my mom and spent a few days in our nation's capital. This trip was actually fantastic. Our hotel was just a couple blocks away from the White House, so we were in downtown DC. We spent our first day exploring the National Mall. We walked about 7 miles that first day, just taking in the sheer magnitude and national glory that are the Washington Monument, the Capitol Building, the Lincoln Memorial, and all of the war memorials. I wanted to tell you about our 2 favorite things that we experienced while we were there. First of all, there's a restaurant there called Old Ebbitt Grill. It's been a staple in DC since 1856, and I'd say they're probably most known for their seafood, their oysters, but it began as a boarding house, and President McKinley is said to have lived there during his tenure in Congress. Presidents Ulysses S. Grant, Andrew Johnson, Grover Cleveland, Theodore Roosevelt, and Warren Harding refreshed themselves at Washington's very first saloon. The decor inside is largely Victorian, mounted animal heads from Teddy Roosevelt and wooden bear statues from Alexander Hamilton. My wife and I both got steaks and we thoroughly enjoyed it. So if you're ever in DC, you have to go to Old Ebbitt Grill. Second, and the thing that we by far enjoyed the most, as a gift to my wife for our anniversary, I got us a private tour of George Washington's home in Mount Vernon, and it was absolutely incredible. The private tour is called Through My Eyes because you're given a tour by someone who is doing a historical portrayal of an actual person who knew George Washington. Our tour guide was Tobias Lear, the personal secretary to George Washington. The amazing thing was that though he was showing you around Washington's home, he was trying to show you exactly who Washington was and what his beliefs were, because those things are woven into the construction of the home, the decoration, the landscaping, the gardening, and so on. I so wish that everyone in the country could hear what Tobias had to say. He talked about the simplicity of the Washington home and its uniqueness for someone who was a world leader and a conqueror, as Washington was. America was starting with a clean slate after the Revolutionary War, and we didn't want to be like anyone else. We wanted to be something new and different, not just politically, but in every way, religiously, philosophically, artistically, etc. This is embodied in Washington's home, at which he received countless visitors from around the world. They were, and we are still, a republic. Our government was established by and for the people of the United States. We were one of the first nations in a long time which was truly Republican, where the people are the power and the government is merely composed of those who are our representatives. It wasn't a complete democracy because it was never the intention to have a national government which operated from the majority voice. Its intention was to give voice to every single person, hence our incredible system of government established by the Founding Fathers. We have 3 co-equal branches of government: the judicial branch, the legislative branch, finally, the executive branch. This system, under the direction of the Constitution and the consent of the American people, created the most effective form of anti-tyrannical government which has ever been adopted by any nation in history. It was a form of Republican governing with all sorts of safeguards and safety measures built in to preserve America's fundamental principle of liberty for all Americans, not just the Americans at the very top of the social political classes. It was the perfect system to lift all the boats in the harbor, which was confounding and is still confounding for so many around the world today. Because the natural thought is to assume socialism and communism are the de facto ways to improve every life evenly across the board. But what historical thinkers and modern political scientists fail to recognize is the spiritual aspect of everything. That there is good and evil. That people are inherently bad, not good. Some of the Enlightenment thinkers recognize this, that man is naturally messy and violent and destructive and carnal. And this is what being a gentleman or a lady was about. It was about controlling human nature. And on our tour, Tobias talked about this very idea as he brought us to the flower garden. The tender care and intricate order of beautiful plant life was perfectly indicative of the imposition of structure on the natural world and the natural person. One of the most influential thinkers on this subject was Thomas Hobbes. He wrote about this in 1651, that when there is no authority or structure, it leads to a life that is solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. Now consider the flower garden. In their natural state, plants just grow wild and disorderly and competitive. And without some kind of intervention, gardens are overrun and destroyed by weeds and other growth. There has to be some sort of order imposed. So the gardener transforms a natural, chaotic environment into a structured, beautiful space. Well, the same is true for the person. We're naturally prone to chaos and nastiness and disorder and brutishness and evil. There must be control and imposition in our lives in order for there to be order and beauty. That is what being a gentleman and a lady means, depicted perfectly in Washington's flower garden. One of the best ways you can help our show today is by sharing the content or by picking up some We the Free merch at wethefreeshow.com. You can be the salt and light you were meant to be by wearing the Salt and Light shirt or by sipping your coffee from the Salt and Light mug, or you can sport the God Bless America shirt and of course the classic We the Free Crest tee. We've even got stickers and a Smells Like Freedom candle, so head on over to wethefreeshow.com and check out our merch today. Just next to the flower garden was a little schoolhouse on the property. It was there that he talked about Washington's beliefs about the importance of a proper education. Our country has come so far away from the education of the 18th and early 19th centuries to now. I would even say since the days of John Dewey and the reforms to American education in the late 19th century, and especially since the founding of the Department of Education in 1979, American education has only gotten progressively worse. Consider the stark differences between the teenagers of yesteryear and the teenagers of today. In Washington's day, teenagers were entering college between the ages of 14 and 16. But before college, they would have either attended a grammar school or homeschool, where they studied classic education, reading, writing, and arithmetic. They studied Latin, Greek, and more as children. In college, though, these people studied Hobbes and Locke, Montesquieu, Voltaire, Rousseau, Aristotle and Plato, Cicero, Socrates, Seneca, Blackstone, The Wealth of Nations, John Calvin, Jonathan Edwards, the Bible, the Magna Carta, the English Bill of Rights, and I could go on and on and on. We're talking about 14-year-olds. I don't mean to disparage today's freshman class, but our society has failed our children in this respect. An American 14-year-old can probably tell you all about his or her gender identity and how to work an iPhone, but they probably can't solve an equation or tell you much of anything about America's founding or tell you a single thing about the classic philosophy of Aristotle. And there are plenty of reasons for this intellectual descent, but we can talk about that another day. Tobias ended our tour at the slave quarters and talked about how Washington treated his slaves, how he provided for their eventual freedom and their financial future. It was actually men like Washington who laid the foundation for the ultimate end to slavery and segregation with the institution and inclusion of the Judeo-Christian idea of liberty. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness was something endowed on every single person by Almighty God, not just the aristocrats and elites who own and operate everything. Modern educators want you to think the Founding Fathers were a bunch of bourgeois racists. Jefferson wrote that all men are created equal, and he supported the Northwest Ordinance of 1787, which prohibited slavery in the Northwest. John Adams publicly condemned slavery. He never had slaves and personally worked to abolish slavery in his state of Massachusetts. Benjamin Franklin established one of the first abolitionist organizations in America, of which he was the president. He also wrote numerous petitions to Congress advocating for the abolition of slavery. James Madison pushed for a gradual emancipation, and finally George Washington. Though he had slaves, Washington condemned it in his personal writings. He freed all of his slaves, and the Washingtons sold off most of their 8,000 acres of land to serve as something like a pension for those who stayed in service to the Washingtons. And these 100 plus slaves are buried right by the Washingtons on that property next to the Washington's tomb. Mount Vernon is absolutely a must-see. They have a great restaurant on the site. The place is absolutely beautiful. This was by no means some big expensive purchase. It's quite affordable, and that's because it's privately owned. They are very, very proud of the fact that they receive 0 federal funding, which I believe is very much in the spirit and wishes of the Washingtons. But that was by far our favorite part of the trip, because when you go through all of that, you begin to understand why everything is named after him and what an incredible person he was. When King George was told that Washington had stepped down as the commander-in-chief, he said, "If he does that, he will be the greatest man in the world." And in fact, Washington was, and still is, one of the greatest heroes of all history. So we had a great few days in the federal district, which bears his name. Next year, though, is our 10-year anniversary, so please leave your comments for where we should go next time. Thanks for watching today. Listen, I want to make sure you stay informed on the news and the biblical response to it, so do yourself and us a favor and hit the subscribe button before you go. And then we'd love for you to check out WeTheFreeShow.com to grab yourself some merch and spread the word about We The Free. And we're also going to put a video on the screen right now that we think that you'll love. Now, go and be that salt and light, and we'll see you next time.